Did you know that tens of thousands of people are addicted to one of the most dangerous and harmful drugs in the world, and that drug is an over-the-counter allergy medication that you probably have in your own home right now? My name is Chase. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Scare Files. Today I want to talk to you guys about a substance that I find very interesting, diphenhydramine. More specifically, the recreational use of diphenhydramine and some of the online discourse surrounding it in the Reddit community r/DPH. First of all, what is diphenhydramine? DPH is an antihistamine anticholinergic most commonly sold under the brand name Benadryl, which means that DPH works in the brain by blocking histamine and acetylcholine receptors, which in regular doses isn't a big deal. It relieves symptoms of allergies and can make you a little bit drowsy. But at much higher or recreational doses, it becomes a pretty big deal because acetylcholine is vital in a lot of bodily processes like memory and muscle control. If these receptors become too blocked by taking a large dose of this drug, it leads to a lot of side effects like urinary retention or the inability to pee, dehydration and dry mouth, impairment of both short and long-term memory, and intense feelings of confusion and dysphoria. At extremely high doses, upwards of 600 to 700 milligrams most times, these effects become much more pronounced and you enter a state known as delirium. Delirium is the point where the hallucinogenic effects of DPH really begin to present themselves. You see, there are three different subcategories of hallucinogen. There are psychedelics, dissociatives, and then there are deliriants, and DPH is a deliriant. Deliriants are unique because not only are they incredibly damaging to your brain and your body, they induce a state called delirium where the user experiences a profound disconnect from reality. With something like mushrooms, for example, which are a psychedelic, the user's consciousness is altered, but they're not seeing things that aren't there. Your dog might walk into the room, for example, and you're seeing your dog from an altered perception. His hair might look extremely fluffy and soft and, kind of looks like it has a sharpness filter on it almost. You start petting and playing with your dog, and eventually he walks back out of the room, and at no point are you questioning whether or not that dog was real. With DPH, that same exact experience might happen, but when your dog leaves the room, you start wondering, wait, I don't even have a dog. Whose dog is this? And then you realize that the dog was never there in the first place. It was all a hallucination. Deliriants produce hallucinations which are completely indistinguishable from reality to the user. On top of that, like I mentioned earlier, acetylcholine also plays a vital role in cognition and memory, so during the whole trip, your short and long-term memory are completely botched. The user's memory is so impaired during a DPH trip that they're unable to recognize anything around them during the trip. Even if they took it in their own home, they feel lost because they cannot recognize anything around them and they don't know where they are. It's not an uncommon experience for someone on DPH to look into a mirror and be completely unable to recognize who's looking back at them. It's like they're seeing a stranger staring back at them in this house that they cannot recognize. They just found themselves here. And to make things even worse, a lot of the time they don't even remember that they took a substance to begin with. If that doesn't already sound bad enough, to make things even worse, the visual and audio hallucinations that a user experiences in a DPH trip are almost always horrifying. Perhaps the most common visual hallucination to see during a DPH trip are the shadow entities, black, semi-translucent humanoid figures with no defining features to them at all. The most infamous of these shadow figures is known as the Hat Man, a shadow figure with a wide-brimmed hat and a trench coat who will sometimes appear with either white or red glowing eyes. The Hat Man is notable because he is the only shadow figure with any sort of defining characteristics, and he's also the only one that seems to have a malevolent atmosphere around him, as if he wishes to bring the user harm. What I find very interesting is that even users who have no prior knowledge to the shadow figures or the Hat Man seem to see both of them. Seeing the shadow figures by themselves would be one thing, that just seems to be an effect of the drug. But what is it about this drug that makes users see this one shadow figure in particular wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a trench coat? This has led some people to theorize that the Shadow Realm has some connection to human psyche and that the Hat Man is the ruler or leader of this realm. Other commonly reported hallucinations include the appearance of loved ones, usually friends or family members that the user hasn't seen for a long time for one reason or another. Oftentimes, this loved one will show up to the user and begin shaming them for bad decisions that they made in their life overall, or even specifically the decision that led them to appear in the first place, taking this drug. Like the shadow figures, shadow spiders and bugs are almost always reported. Usually they're crawling out of gaps in the floors and in the walls. DPH can also give you an itching or tingling sensation over your body, which makes these bugs and spiders seem even more real to the user because they can feel them crawling on their skin. Phantom cigarettes are also commonly reported. The user will hallucinate a cigarette in their hand and begin smoking it. They'll even flick the ashes and then eventually realize that the cigarette was never there. This is also reported by users who have no underlying knowledge of these phantom cigarettes, and a lot of the times these people aren't even smokers. Again, we don't really know for sure why this is, but it could be because nicotine binds to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the brain, which means that nicotine can actually help relieve symptoms of delirium. So it seems like this is your brain's way of craving a relief from the poison that it's been flooded with. Audio hallucinations are also present throughout the entire duration of the trip. Users will usually report hearing footsteps, knocking on the doors and the walls, and even voices coming from within their own home, even when they're home alone. Me reading this all off to you really doesn't give the same effect as someone who has actually experienced this, so let's go through and read a couple of trip reports from the r/DPH subreddit. 875 milligram trip report. Around 10 p.m., I took 675 milligrams with 200 milligrams left in my pockets. I hadn't eaten for 2 days before. Around 11 p.m. when I made my previous post was probably the last few minutes I was still mentally there. Being lost in some forest in the middle of the night, even sober, especially downtown Vancouver, is already fucking crazy. But I don't trip in my room, and I thought maybe I could scare the addiction out of me if I have a bad enough trip. I had a small water bottle and knife with me. My phone background said it's not real, so I could remind myself, but my phone died shortly after my previous post was made. I haven't seen my phone since. I'm using my computer to type this. Around 11:30ish, I really had no sense of time. Everything was drifting and moving. The trees were like whispering to me. I could feel insects crawling all over me, but when I would look, nothing was there. The smallest sounds made me jump, so I nearly had a heart attack, literally, when some guy walked past me and asked if I had a cigarette. His face was disfigured like it had been burnt off. I tried to say no, but what came out was a slow, inaudible, "not it." Once I start hearing other men who were clearly drunk in the distance, I kept my knife in hand. I would later find several small wounds on my thigh because I think I kept accidentally hitting it but couldn't feel it. I would try to sit down because I felt 200 pounds heavier, but get up after seeing all the insects on the floor that would start crawling all over me. But after getting up, I would go sit down again, forgetting why I got up. It felt like I did this 10 times. The men in the distance were louder. They were yelling at me, I think, insulting me, calling me a weak, stupid little bitch for not taking more. I thought taking more would make them stop. Thinking I only took 300 milligrams for some reason, I decided to try to swallow the rest of the pills dry. They sounded worse. I could hear their footsteps like they were running towards me, but like in any nightmare, I couldn't run. I was trying, but it felt impossible. I would go one way, see a tall-ass shadow figure at least 10 feet tall, and try to go another way, but because this was a path, this meant I ended up walking into the bushes. Nowhere felt safe. My vision was insanely blurry, and it was so dark that I practically felt blind. But I could hear the voices coming from every direction. I would walk one way away from it, and suddenly it was in front of me. I was violently shaking, both because I couldn't help it, but also because I was trying to shake off the hundreds of beetles that were crawling on me. It felt like I was time traveling and teleporting. I would walk one way and end up somewhere else, not sure how I got there. I started hearing my name. It was the voice of my dead mom. She was asking me what I was doing and where I was. I would speak out, but my mouth felt paralyzed. I ended up just mumbling. I got a call from my guardian asking where I was. I made out the words park and then stopped when I realized I didn't even have my phone on me. While walking, when I would look down at my legs, I would start freaking out because I didn't know why I had legs, like I didn't know what I was. The next thing I remember is making it out of the bushes and back onto the path, thinking I had to go home for dinner now, and all of a sudden I had this intense feeling of impending doom and fell. I felt like I was completely paralyzed both physically and mentally. I was looking to the side and see this huge spider coming toward me, but I couldn't move. My heart rate felt like it was at 240 beats per minute. It felt like my eyes were about to close permanently. I genuinely believed I was dying. Now that I look back at this, I think I was seizing. After this, the rest is hard to make out, like I was going in and out of consciousness for hours. The next time I felt like I was actually alive, the sun was out and it was clearly still very early. My chest hurt so much, but my heart rate was normal. I was on the ground and immediately got up because I fucking hate bugs and didn't want them on me. I was still seeing flashing and black spots, but there was no more voices. When I went to check my phone, I realized I'd lost it and didn't have my knife on me either. I walked for a couple hours and found myself near a hospital. I was originally near Stanley Park and ended up near St. Paul's Hospital, but didn't want to go in. But when two police officers saw me and asked if I was okay, I said I was, but they could see that I wasn't. I didn't have the energy to transit home, so I thought I might as well have a bed and admitted myself. Now I am home, and all I can think about is when I'm going to take Benadryl again. Trip report. Taking 700 milligrams of DPH, forgetting I took it, then tripped until the next day at school. This took place about 4 weeks ago. I've taken DPH 3 times in total. My first dose was 450 milligrams, but I passed out before the trip, so I thought it was a light dose. This story is my second time taking DPH. If it helps any, this is not my first time taking a hallucinogen, but it is my first deliriant. One night I was bored and I wanted to trip on something. Usually I'd just smoke weed and relax, but I didn't have anything with me at the time. I decided to pick up a bottle of allergy meds from Walmart and take them home. It's a Tuesday night and I count up 28 pills, 25 milligrams each, and down them with water. I don't really feel much besides being tired and extremely stale. I'm laying in my bed and I just fall asleep. I wake up to see my stepdad in my face asking if I'm grateful, to which I respond, yes, I'm grateful. I thought I came back mid-conversation and was trying to remember what I had said to him. I black out and I come back to see my mom's arms wrapped around my door holding the bottle of DPH. I get really scared and think she found the bottle. Then the bottle turns into hot sauce, which she proceeds to pour on the carpet. I just think, oh, it must be for the cat. I black out once again, then wake up while I'm having a conversation with my brother. It goes along the lines of him asking, what were you doing in the bathroom? I tell him I was having a good time. He just looks at me and says I didn't need to know that, even though I never went into the bathroom. This whole time I have zero control over what I'm saying. Looking back, I'm pretty sure this conversation wasn't real. I actually fell asleep this time and I woke up and completely forgot I even took the DPH. As I'm in the shower, I feel very embarrassed and I cover myself up. I look around to see the shower puffs hanging on the wall. I throw them out of the shower as I thought they were watching me. While I'm in the shower, I feel like I'm in my third period class, but in the shower at the same time. It was like two places merged into one. People from my school say that they raised my shower head up and I go to look and say I don't see anything different. I finish my shower and suddenly I'm in the school bathroom. I see someone standing in front of me on their phone as I'm looking down. I stop walking and think I'm gonna let them pass, but they stop walking too. I wonder why they stopped and I look up and it's myself in the mirror. Even then, I still didn't realize I was tripping. I just sit in front of the mirror and talk to myself. Not on purpose, I just stand there and talk with no control. I thought to myself, why am I talking? Or was that me who said that? I couldn't even understand what I was saying, not sure if it was the DPH or if I was speaking gibberish. I walk out of the bathroom, still wrapped in my towel, and I see my cat sitting on the floor. I go to pet her and she just straight up disappeared, which scared me pretty bad. This is when I remember I took DPH. I go to check the time and this is when I see it was 2 a.m. I was upset but excited I got to go back to sleep. I look around my wardrobe trying to find a pair of shorts to wear, and for the life of me, I cannot find anything. The whole time, I'm just whispering to myself and laughing. I spent a good 30 minutes looking around my room, but I just kept forgetting, so I checked the places I checked 10 times already. I give up and just go to bed in my towel. I had a blanket folded at the end of my bed. I kept thinking it was my cat. I would go to pet her, realize it was a blanket, immediately forget, and go back to pet it. This happened at least 4 times. I snap out of it and try to fall asleep. As I'm laying in bed, I see thousands of ants all over my bed frame. Keep in mind, up to this point, I barely saw any bugs besides the occasional spider here and there. It almost looked like the bed had arm hair, but each follicle of hair was an ant. I stare at them, trying to decide if they were real or not. I go to kill them, and as I look at my hand, I see dead ants on my fingers, fully convincing me that they were real. I swear I could even feel them crawling on my hand. I just sit there killing ants over and over, but they kept coming. I just go to sleep at this point, somehow ignoring the ants. The next morning, I'm not even sure how, but I wake up with a pair of shorts on. I don't even remember getting ready. I'm putting my things in my bag. My brother says, "You're finally returning to normal." I'm like, what do you mean? I forgot I even took anything the night prior, and he tells me I was acting weird all night and even in the morning. He tells me how he thought I was on the phone, but I was really just talking to myself. As I'm about to leave, I look up and see lots of ants in the corner of my ceiling. I tell my brother someone must have left food out and now we have ants. He shines a light on the corner and all the ants disappear. He asks what I'm on, and I just say I was tired and go to school. In my first period, anything in my hand kept disappearing, such as a book or a pencil. I'd look away or put my head down, then once I looked back, it would be gone. I'd try to pick things up, but it would just be a 2D image stuck on the surface. I'm walking with my girlfriend to my second period, and she asks if I'm okay because she says I look out of it. Of course, I say I'm fine and go to class and tell her I'll meet her in the front of my third period. I only have 4 periods in a day. Honestly, I don't remember second period at all. I walked out of my class and meet up with my girlfriend, and as I'm walking with her, I look at her and she's gone. I assumed she got lost in the crowd. Later that week, I tell her about what happened, and she tells me, I never saw you after second period. I was waiting for you outside of third, but you never came. This meant that I was talking to myself in the hallway, and I was still having vivid hallucinations the next day. I completely forget where I'm going, so I do a 180 and walk to my fourth period instead. I get there and see no one in class and panic for a quick second. As the bell rang, I realized where I was supposed to be. As I walk up to my class, my teacher asks where I was because my girlfriend was waiting for me. I tell him I accidentally walked into my fourth. Once again, I don't remember anything from that class besides the teacher waking me up. He asks, "Are you gonna go to lunch?" I look around to see an empty class and realized I had slept through the bell. I just tell him I didn't get much sleep last night and this is about the end of the trip. I took DPH once more after this with a dose of 500 milligrams, but the next day I threw the entire bottle away. After my third time, I haven't used DPH since. 700 milligrams was definitely way too much, but when I took 450, I thought it wasn't much, so what's 250 more? To be completely honest, I'm not sure how nobody in school caught me. I was still tripping and hallucinating pretty badly. To this day, I can't stand the smell of anything that smells like the pills. Anytime I catch a whiff, I can feel the lumps of pills in my throat and feel sick. I totally did not think the trip would last all the way until the next day. One of the most mind-numbing experiences I've had, and it was not fun in the slightest. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like a very fun time to me. But if that wasn't already bad enough, DPH is also incredibly physically damaging to your body. In fact, it might be one of the most damaging things that you could put into your body on a regular basis. Recreational dosages of DPH can cause trouble breathing, high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke, and seizures. Consistent long-term use of DPH can also cause chronic damage like cognitive impairment and memory loss. It can also lead to organ failure in your kidneys and your liver because DPH puts heavy stress on these organs and damages them over time. And long-term use is likely if you ever decide to give this substance a try because despite everything about it being awful, DPH is incredibly addictive. This post from the DPH subreddit gives some insight into some of the daily struggles that you can encounter after abusing DPH even years after quitting. The consequences. Years after quitting, I'm still having bad effects from overdosing on this stupid poison. I was a teen with no friends, no access to alcohol or real drugs, and one day I googled, can you get high on any over-the-counter medicines? I ran across a Reddit post called How to Trip Safely on Benadryl. Wrong. There is nothing safe about this. I stupidly overdosed on anywhere from 700 to 1,000 milligrams, probably 20 or more times over the next few years. Sometimes alone, sometimes mixing with Robitussin. Now I'm in my 20s and these are the effects I am left with almost constantly. Shortness of breath, pounding and jumpy heartbeat, dry eyes which gave me a compulsive blinking tic, static and noises in my ears, and the worst, the inside of my head always feels creaky, like something is just off. It's hard to explain, but it's terrible. Not to mention, the substance has also been linked to a 50% increase in Alzheimer's risk. I wish so badly that I could turn back time and never consume this stupid shit. This has to be one of the worst things that you can do for your health. Once I was knocked out for almost 2 days, and when I woke up, I could still see raindrops all over my walls, which I knew weren't real. I will never forget the painful and toxic feeling throughout my whole body on this stuff. Here's another post from the community discussing the long-term consequences of DPH abuse, long-term usage of DPH and its effects. This is from personal experience, originally posted as a reply in r/drugs, but thought I'd leave it here. Messing with DPH is a terrible idea in my opinion, and I wouldn't recommend continuous use. Back in 2013, I did DPH daily for about 3 to 4 months. Once I stopped, I had derealization and depersonalization for a very long time. Nothing felt real. The hallucinogen persisting perception disorder was unreal, and to this day it's still there but not nearly as severe as it was back then. After stopping DPH, I had memory problems constantly. I was struggling to string a sentence together a lot of the time, and my cognitive functions definitely suffered. I was delusional about everything to do with my existence. I was the only person to exist as far as I was aware at that point. There were messages only to me found in the most irrelevant things, a song, a TV show, etc. Nothing was real, everything was fabricated by my own imagination, which confused me as I pondered how I even existed in the first place. Every morning I would wake up to fractals and an intense rainbow of colors. Red and green hexagons were twisting and growing on every blank surface. This is still an issue, but not as prominent. Darkness was coated with extreme static, and that made it difficult to see. I could find faces and shapes in anything, the grass, the pavement, anything at all would have some sort of activity. Shadows left in my vision after looking at bright lights, and after watching the evolution of man on my bathroom wall, I realized how fucked up I was. This went on for a very long time. I was such a mess I barely even remembered it now. I thought I was suffering some sort of psychosis, and it was absolutely terrifying. 4 years later, the hexagons still appear on blank surfaces, but they're jittery and no longer twist and grow. I still have a little static and shadows stick around for an annoyingly long time, but I'm much better now than I was then. DPH is serious. You're essentially poisoning yourself for a high. The experience is interesting, and I can understand it has a weird way of making you want to do it again, but please be aware that it can have awful consequences. At this point, you might be wondering why anyone would want to try DPH at all. It doesn't sound like a fun time, it's extremely damaging, and the long-term side effects from it are horrible to live with. Some of these people may be in a foreign country where the drug laws are stricter, but it seems like more often than not, the people trying DPH are teenagers who don't have access to other things like alcohol or pot. A lot of these posts that we just read are written by people who are clearly still in high school. And some of the kids getting sucked into trying this are even as young as middle school age. This next post is written by a parent whose 13-year-old daughter tried DPH. My child took 700 milligrams. My 13-year-old, who weighs about 100 pounds, took 30 tablets on Friday night. By 4 a.m. Saturday morning, we were in the emergency room. A few hours later, we were taken by ambulance to a hospital with a pediatric unit where I watched my daughter have to be restrained by 4 grown men. She was eventually put into wrist and ankle restraints. She was in psychosis with full body tremors. She had to have EKGs done every hour to make sure her heart was still okay. She urinated on herself, and when the nurses tried to change her, she thought she was being SA'd and she was screaming in terror. She was absolutely terrified and helpless, and she didn't even know who I was. After several hours and dose after dose of Ativan to no avail, she had to be life-flighted via helicopter to a hospital in another state with a pediatric ICU because they were concerned about her heart stopping. Finally, she fell asleep. She woke up on Sunday morning confused and sore. She could barely feed herself, and she couldn't walk at first. Her muscles were spent and she was bruised all over. She is very lucky to come out of this with no brain damage or damage to any other organs. Now she's in a behavioral health hospital for at least a week. She endured over 48 hours of hell. Do not do this to yourselves. It's not worth it. What might be the most infamous example of the full extent of damage that DPH is able to do is the user Tired of People Faking Too. This Redditor has a long post history, so I'm not going to read them all here, but I do want to go through some of the posts. How has DPH affected your life? I'm curious as to how y'all found out about DPH, why you started using it recreationally, and how it has affected your life both negatively and or positively. I know your experiences will be subjective and personal only to you, but I'm still curious. I first found out about DPH on January 20th, 2019 after smoking pot with a couple of my friends the previous night. We had been talking about getting some LSD, shrooms, and other hallucinogens, but I had never tried those drugs and I honestly didn't have the money at the time to buy them. So instead, I went searching on Google for cheap and legal substances that I could take as a substitute hallucinogenic. I found a website with like 10 different legal types of substances that I could buy to hallucinate on, but unfortunately, the one that caught my attention the most was DPH. I went farther on the internet to research in depth about the long-term and short-term side effects of abusing DPH, the physical symptoms of a DPH overdose, various people's trip experiences on different amounts of DPH, where to buy a large quantity of the cheapest off-brand DPH, and looked at several drug-alcohol interactions with DPH. I did not end up taking DPH until February 15th, 2019. My first trip was on 450 milligrams and it was honestly horrible. I wasn't smart about it at all. I remember taking it with 6 cans of beer around 11 p.m. under some random highway. I remember walking aimlessly around town, kept falling, kept slurring my speech, and ended up asking the local PD to drive me to the ER. It was pretty stupid of me. But anyways, since February 15th, I've probably ingested over 1,000 pills of DPH, and my tolerance has gotten extremely high to where it takes at least 32 pills to get me even a little high. So basically, that's a very brief summary of how I got this way. You can ask me questions about my experience here, and I'll answer y'all if you want some more details. Currently have ingested 4,500 milligrams and will be ingesting 9,000 more tomorrow afternoon. Do you ever just break down and cry? Do you ever just realize your life has no purpose and you don't care if you die? Do you ever just want your loved ones to not worry, so when they ask you if you're okay, you lie? I've been so angry with the world and myself and everyone in it. I hate that I'm so mad all the time because I'm usually a very kind, patient, and compassionate person. This uncontrollable rage has been building up inside of my mind for the past several days, and it terrifies me thinking about what damage I'm capable of doing. I need it to stop. I need everything to stop. I can't do this anymore. I'm so alone and I don't want to be here. P.S. I know that there is a high chance of me surviving 13.5 grams, but I'm posting this just in case I succeed. If you're new to this sub and have never tried DPH, I strongly urge you to leave this hell site before you are sucked into this endless black hole of terror, pain, and confusion. How am I not dead yet? I've ingested so much. I took 52 last Saturday, 44 last Sunday, 52 on Monday, 44 Wednesday, and 52 today. I'm not talking about how many milligrams I took. I'm talking about how many pills I have taken. I have been so far into my addiction that my tolerance is 44 and I can't go more than 2 days without it. I really have no clue how my heart is still beating, my lungs are still breathing, and my brain is still working. I don't know why I posted this, but I guess I posted it to vent to y'all about the struggles of abusing DPH. I'm sure some of you understand. Respiratory depression / respiratory failure. Have any of y'all ever had breathing problems caused by taking too much DPH at once? I've been having really scary issues with not being able to breathe properly. This isn't a new side effect because I've had these respiratory problems before, but it hasn't been this bad since January. Basically, the oxygen level in my bloodstream has been fluctuating between 80 and 86% the last several days. It hasn't really concerned me because I've still been able to somewhat function physically, but now I've started to notice that I can't really stay awake for long periods of time. Also, I've started to have these episodes of not breathing at all, like I went 45 seconds without taking in any oxygen. I know it's not really that serious because people can hold their breath way longer than that, but that's because they wanted to hold their breath. I, on the other hand, really want to breathe in oxygen, but I can't convince my lungs to inhale, no matter how hard I try to concentrate on taking a breath. I know I'm probably just being extra / overdramatic or reading way too much into my physical symptoms, but I was wondering if anyone else has dealt with this before. 1.5 grams every night. I'm so fucking mad at myself. What the fuck is wrong with me? Why do I think this is okay? Like, I literally just vomited up 60 pills and swallowed them back down. It's the nastiest shit, and I can't believe I even just did that. I'm so disgusted with myself. Update. Few minutes in, and I'm already seeing stars and galaxies, and my eyes are starting to flicker uncontrollably. Also starting to tremor bad and having a seizure aura. Anyone else experience seizures when tripping on 1+ grams of DPH? I ended up in the hospital today after having a grand mal seizure when I was in the store. I had only taken 1.5 grams, the normal amount I take, and I thought I was fine, but apparently I wasn't. The most fucked up thing about this is that as soon as I got released, I went and took another 40 pills. Also, I knew that I was having seizures at this dose because I've woken up several times at night with me falling off my bed and hitting my bookshelf and just destroying everything in my room from my convulsions. But it usually only happens within the first few hours of me tripping. This time I had a seizure 9 hours after taking 60 pills. As you can see, this user was very deep into this addiction and clearly felt very hopeless. Even among recreational users, the dosages and the frequency at which he was taking these dosages is insane. Even among people who choose to use this substance recreationally, they usually space their dosages out and try not to dose multiple days back to back to back because of how damaging this substance is. Among a DPH subculture, there's something called joining the 700 club. Taking over 700 milligrams of DPH is the point at which most people go into full-blown delirium. The visual and audio hallucinations that are indistinguishable from reality begin to kick in. This user's tolerance was so high that he was taking over double that, 1.5 grams every single day, and he was getting little to no effect from it at all. It was just to help him function. Eventually, this would cultivate in Tired of People Faking 2, making his last post ever on Reddit to the DPH subreddit, this one simply titled 276 pills / 6.9 grams / 6,900 milligrams. Why the hell not? Almost poetically, these pills were sprawled out on this blanket in the rough shape of an angel. You can see the wings, the center body mass, and the legs. There's no way to tell if this was done intentionally or not, though. Another user would leave a comment under this post saying, "Don't tell us you're planning on taking all of that at once. I was hospitalized for taking 1.5 grams, let alone 6.9. Please be safe." And ROP would respond, "Yes, I plan on it. I take 1.5 grams regularly. I've taken 2.5 grams 3 times in the past year. I took 4.5 grams in April. 6.9 grams may be the dose that finally frees me." He definitely did not go out peacefully. A DPH overdose is a notoriously horrible and painful way to die, but at least his struggle is over, and I hope he did manage to find peace in the end. 6.9 grams is one of the highest dosages. It might even be the highest dosage that I've ever seen posted. In order to consume that much DPH, assuming that these are the 25 milligram tablets, which they look like they are, ROP had to ingest 276 pills of Benadryl. With all that said, DPH is incredibly interesting to me to read about and learn about. Deliriants in general are a very unique subcategory of drugs, but they're absolutely something that you should stay curious about and not try for yourself. There is nothing about this that could ever make it worth it. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing to see more content like this in the future. I plan to talk about a whole lot of other cool shit over here. My name is Chase. This has been Scare Files. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video.